It's time, for Dapper Dino!
Okay, so welcome back to the second video on my channel. This will be another simple coding tutorial, but it will also involve on-screen UI and how to change it in code. So first of all, here we have the scene view and the game view. The scene view is where you do a thing, where you make a thing, move it around, position. The game view, you can't edit. This is what the camera sees, and this is what you would see if you were playing the game. So, for example, in our world, here is the main camera. Oops, here it is. You move around with WASD whilst holding down right click to look. So this is the camera, and there's the preview, which is the same as the game scene. And what we could do is we can right click to create a new 3D object, cube, and where is that? It is right in front of us. Now if you go into the inspector, you see it's positioned in the center of the world. If it isn't, just click this little button and then reset. Now what we want to do is we want to use it as a floor, for example. So we will move it down. So we could move it down with the green arrow, but let's just put it at -1. And then we will scale it, and the hotkey for scaling is R, which means you can scale in either the Y, the Z, or the X, or in all at once. But let's just make it big in those two. And now we've got ourselves a floor. So if you go and look in the game scene, here's the white floor. Now we want to, whoops, sorry, I did not mean to parent the cube to the camera. Anyway, so now we can move the camera with these little arrow keys. I'll move it over here, up, you can do what you like. And then the hotkey for rotating is E. And you've got these little circles which change it in each dimension. We're going to rotate the red, which red is always X, but for some reason, yeah, the X, that's right. And we can tilt the camera down, so we're looking down at the floor. Now, while I'm here, I'll quickly teach you about changing a material, because at the moment this white floor just seems very, I don't like the look of it. You can leave it if you want, but otherwise you can right click down here in your assets, create, and material. There we go. And we'll call it floor, for example. And here you can change all the texturing and material properties of the floor. For the time being, we're simply going to just change the color of it. So, oh, whoops. Well, first of all, you'll want to drag your material in your scene view, not your game view, onto the material. And there you go. There you've got your material on the floor. And if you change the material, it changes it in real time on the floor. So you can always just adjust it like that. And then what I'll do is I'll quickly create another cube. I'll call the first one floor, and I'll call this one, cube. And back in the scene view, I'll position this at the center by pressing reset, and I'll bring it up to 1, and I'll slide it along here so it's in front of the camera. There you go. There we go. Now, you don't have to copy me exactly. This is just for testing purposes. So here's our game, and well, nothing will happen if we press play because there's nothing that could happen. But what we want to do now is we want to start adding UI. So we can right click on the hierarchy. We go to UI, and you see all of these options. Now, in general, you could just start off with a text, but we're going to start off with a canvas, which is where other UI can go. Now, if you go to the scene view, you go over here. Screen space overlay. There are other options for UI. Screen space overlay simply means, if we go to it, it's this big rectangle, which is the screen. It represents the screen. Or you could set it to screen space camera, which means the UI is in the world itself. So you could put text on walls, for example. And, oh wait, sorry, no, that's over the camera. World space is when it's in the world space, the world itself. Anyway, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it simple and leave it as screen space overlay. And now, in the canvas, we could create a UI panel. And as you can see, this big transparent whitish rectangle appears. And if you go into the game view, it's the overlay on the screen. Now, for the sake of this, oh, well, first of all, I've already shown you R is for scaling, E is for rotating, and then W is for moving, which is by default. If you press T, which is the next one along, or just click on the top left, this is for scaling UI mainly. Now, I've got the panel selected, so if I scale this, those little corner points stay there because those are the points of the canvas. We're just changing the panel. So I can, put this along here. As you can see, the panel is just on the left. So let's say we wanted a game and a little score in the corner, like that, for example. We could also change the transparency so it's a bit more prominent. I'll put it up to full, why not? So now when we press the play, well, nothing's going to happen really. It's just going to stay like this. But and also our console, the code from the last video, if you watched the last video, is still there because I've left the code, but I'm going to be changing that in this video. So in our panel, we now want to add some more UI because having a panel empty is pretty useless. So we're going to use a text element. And as you can see, there's a very small text thing down there. So let's go into our scene view. And let's just call it score because we can. And it's going to be a score, I guess. I mean, it'll be whatever I want it to be. You can simply just increase font size, but the problem is, I think in doing that, you lose quality in most cases. But what you could do to not lose quality is you can scale the text. And then increase the size. Ooh, let me just undo, sorry. Best fit, and where's the scaling? Let's scale this to the same size as the window, and we will center it so it's right in the middle, as you can see there. And I don't think we really need to, well, we could just increase that. There we go, that looks nice. New text. Now, let's have a placeholder text. So while the game's not running, or if we don't tell it to change it, we can just have it say score, like that. And, well, actually, now we'll just have it saying test text for now. Obviously, when you run, nothing will happen. You've just got your text there. And now this is where the coding comes in. So, if you haven't yet made if you didn't watch the first video or didn't follow along and you've just started a new project, then I'll show you what to do. But otherwise, just open up your Coding Basics script. Now, if I think correctly, we've got it attached to this game object here. Now, what we'll do is we'll open this code, so you can either do it through here or here. And if you're watching this, I'll put it at the top so we know where it is all the time. If you're watching this video without the previous one, just create an empty game object like that and add a script to it. So like I called mine Coding Basics, for example, and just create a new script and do that. But for us, we're going to open the one we've already got. So where is it? I've already got it open, I think. So this is what we were working on last time, teaching you the basics of, well, variables, methods, update, start, void, all that lot. Now, what we're going to do in this one is we're going to be using text, and because we are only using Unity Engine, if you want to use anything with the UI in your code, you have to add a new using. So using Unity engine dot and then UI, and that gives you access to UI specific code. So we can leave most of this here. It's not really the end of the world. We'll leave it there for like demonstrational purposes. So at the start, where we declared all the stuff such as, well, the integer number and the string name and all that lot, we're going to have another public, and I like to separate my publics and privates so it's easier to tell what's what. So we're going to add a new public. Now, we want to edit the text in the scene, and quite simply, text is called text. And then we need to give the variable a name, so for the sake of this, we'll call it text. And you put your semicolon to end the line. And now, because we've added a public text, when you go back into Unity, in the inspector on the game object, with the code, you'll see we've got an empty text field. Now, there's different ways of doing this. You can click on the little circle thing to bring up a window of all the text, all the text objects in your scene, or we can simply drag in from the left. So this is our score that I want to edit, and drag it across, and then it says our score there. And that means when referring to text in code, it refers to this text here. Now, if we press play, you should expect it just says test text because that's the default. Nothing will change. Yep. Now if we go to the code, we can now edit the text. So simply, we're going to, in the void start, when this text is first made, we want to change the text. So what we can do is we can refer to text, which is the variable text, And then when you use a dot, it's what part of the text. So you can refer to all these other things. You can even do different methods specific for the text. But if we want to edit the text, it's text. It might seem a bit confusing, text.text. If, for example, if we change this text to say score, because you might have different texts and you want to differentiate. So we now call that score.text, which means you're referring to the text of score. Anyway, and then we put an equals, which means we're setting the text, and then we put what we want it to equal. So we might want the text to equal, how about we want it to equal number? So you see the integer number. If we want the text to equal number, now there's going to be a problem here, but I'll let it happen, and we'll see how to fix it. So here we go. There's a compile error. It says cannot implicitly convert into string, because as I said in the last video, an integer is a number and a string is, well, a string of characters. And we're telling it we want it to change the text to an integer, and it doesn't know how to do that because integers are simply used for maths, whereas strings are used for printing to text or, well, comparing to other strings. So if we want to convert the number integer to a string, Unity, quite simply, has a command called toString, and open close. Now what that means is it just takes this number value, which will be whatever number we've put in the inspector, which is, come on, we gave it 200. Now it'll convert the number 200 into a string 200. Oops, what have I done? Not set to reference. Oh, because I changed the variable name in here from text to score, I changed the name of it score, I basically created a new variable, so I need to go and reassign the text thing that I dragged in as gone. So I just need to do it again. Simple mistake, and play. Now this text will change to 200, which is the score. So there you go. So now, well, if I changed it here, it wouldn't change it here because this code only gets run when the program started. And because I'm in runtime right now, it won't affect it. Well, let's say I'll cut this out of here, out of the start, and I'll put it in the update, which obviously means it gets run every frame. So we'll press play again, and it'll seem the same at the start. It'll just change it to 200. But if I go in here and I change this number to 500, or whenever I'm typing any numbers out, as you can see, it changes it in real time down here, which is what you want when you have a score in a game, because say you're on 10 points and you go up to 20 points, you want the on-screen text to change. And by default, the number's 0, because, I mean, I guess you can go negative, yeah, but generally you won't go negative and score. But anyway, that's how that works. And also, when you leave play mode, any variables or anything you've changed in the inspector will go back, unless you change a prefab. In that case, it'll stay the same. I'll go into prefabs in the next video. I think that's a good idea. Don't worry about that for now. Anyway, so now we've learned how to turn a text into a string. And let's also show, just for the sake of it, if you wanted it to say a specific text, you would just say hello. And you could leave it like that. I mean, personally, I like putting the strings in brackets, because then if you wanted to add more to it, so I could say, how I can do it is I could say score, colon, space, because you want a space, otherwise there wouldn't be a space in the thing, plus, and then you want to get score dot toString. So now, you might expect, in here it will tell us our score, that the score text, because I hard coded the word score, it will never change that. Ooh, what have I done? Did I? Ah, wait. I feel like that's why. No? It's called score and it's .toString. And what's the problem we're getting? Unity UI .text. That's a bit odd. Why is that happening? How about I just put that there? That's quite odd. Because that should simply write the word score, which it is, and then it should write not unityengine.ui.text. I'll have to think about that. Let me just cut this out. So this is another good thing about debugging, because you'll come across errors all the time, and even though someone watching might simply figure out what it is, when you're the one doing it, you might not notice. Oh, I know what I'm doing. That's silly. Basically, I'm being silly. I was putting score, so score dot to string, and because I'm being silly, score is not the number we were putting in. I was putting in the word score, which is basically turning text to text, which is just stupid. So the only thing I did wrong was actually just it's meant to be number.toString. So some of you probably noticed that I was being stupid. So now I can get it to say score space plus that. Anyway, and then I will put that back in the update because I want it to change in real time. Okay, so now we go back into here and stop it and press play again, restart, and that problem will be gone now. Yep, and obviously as we change this, that'll change. So it updates live now. So we have a live updated score, but without the word score changing, which is always nice. Okay, anything else I should do now? I think the last thing I'll show in this video is some other UI thing quickly. So if we go into the scene view, and we zoom out with scroll wheel, which is a lot faster zooming out. Obviously this is the screen UI overlay. And there's all these other things you can put on your canvas. So let's go through them, what they are. So text is obviously text. An image, you could just put a picture on there. Raw image is slightly different because, well, I'll show you what you can do for raw image in a second. Button, I will show in another video as well, where you can add on-screen buttons that trigger things, such as, well, menus and whatever you want. Toggle, I haven't used toggles personally. I don't really see the use. Where is this? Oh, no, I do. I'm just silly. I haven't used them, but obviously if you want a checkbox, so maybe in an options menu, you might want to toggle on and off, I don't know, clouds or whatever you want, music. Just turn off the audio, turn off whatever you want. Just toggle on and off. It's quite simple, actually. I'm being silly. There is slider. Well, you can have like a volume slider, for example. Scroll bar, you know, scrolling up and down. I don't need to go through all these. Drop down box, somewhere to put in input. Canvas being the general thing which holds everything together. A panel is a bit on the screen to put other stuff on top of. That's visual. A canvas is not visual. That just is like the parent that sorts it out. I'll leave those two for now. So let's add a raw image, as I said I would. And we'll also add it under a new panel because we're keeping the bottom right panel for the score. So let's put this panel. I'm not going to bother renaming things just yet. So we'll put this like here. And this raw image looks pretty boring right now. It's just a little white square. There's nothing on it. You can do what you want with this really. You could put on, let's just make it bigger. You could make this image, you can change the color of it. Oops, that's the panel. Oopsie daisy. You want to parent the raw image to the panel. So then, for example, if you move the panel, the image will move with it. So yeah, you can change the color of this if you wanted to. You can do a lot of things with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new camera. So let's go down to our little world. So as you can see, we've got a little thing with our main camera that we see on the screen here. And let's say we make a new camera. So you can create a camera. And by default, this will get changed to our main camera for now anyway, but we don't want that. Anyway, let's just position a camera weirdly. Why not? Let's just put it like that. So we've got this other view here. Obviously in games you'll have different views of cameras. And we don't want this camera to be the main one that we see in the game scene. What we can do is we can have it displayed here on this little box. So you see this render texture here. What we want to do is we want to create a new render texture and we'll call it camera texture. And it's just this black square for now. It doesn't matter. We'll leave it like that for now. And then if we go to the camera again, sorry, so this is the main camera and this is the new camera we made. We will select this render texture. You could drag it in or you can press this and select camera texture. Now, this camera texture, as you can see, it's updated down here, is what we can see through this camera. And it's changed our main camera back to being the one that's shown here. Now what we can do is we can go into our raw image and we can drag on the camera texture. So now, look, it's there. Now it's a bit distorted because the camera texture is 256 by 256. Now let's just say our camera is going to be 1920 by 1080, right? So now we also will need to change the where am I going? I want to go to the canvas again, and we get the UI scaling tool, and obviously you can, I'm not gonna bother getting the aspect ratio right. You can always mess around with that. I can't think of a simpler way of doing it personally, but you could set it to the same size as the canvas, so it's, well, 1920 by 1080, and then you can simply shift scale it so it keeps the resolution, and then line it up, for example. And it still looks a bit odd, but that's just because it's really squished, and also the angle of the camera isn't the greatest. I just did it for the sake of showing you how to set that up. But now that updates live, so if we drag the game view here and put that across, we press play, and one thing is, when the game's playing, you can edit stuff in the scene view and it'll get reverted when you've finished. So we're going to go on here and we're going to move this cube up, and as you can see, as well as it moving up in the main camera, it moves up in this other camera. So let's say you had a game with like a CCTV system, like a camera around corners thing, or you want to show the player somewhere else in the world. That's the way you would do it. You would simply have, well, it doesn't even have to be on a UI overlay, it could be in the world you have a camera which they can look through. And it's quite interesting, the stuff you can do with that, and I'll show in future videos other ways of using it, and also better than making it just a little image there. But that is updated live, just as this camera is here. You can make some pretty interesting puzzles with this, seeing from different angles, because if you change the camera type to orthographic, for example, so it's a bit even weirder, because orthographic meaning there's no depth really, it's flat, I guess you could say. If you go to the game scene, this is orthographic, for example. Wait, let me just mess around with this. And then, so obviously that's orthographic, you just see without the depth, I guess. And then you go back to perspective mode, where you can look from different angles and see all the depth. But anyway, I think I've covered enough this video showing how to set up a simple scene, change the score on the UI, add a live updated camera during gameplay. And I think that's enough for this video, so thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll make another video tomorrow. Thanks.